And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud. Stolen credentials are an open door to your corporate assets. SpyCloud is the world leader in recapturing breach data and making it actionable to prevent cyber attacks. SpyCloud solutions protect your employee's identity and prevent criminals from using employee credentials to commit account takeover, data breaches, BEC, and ransomware attacks. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire to check your breach exposure now and see how global businesses are using SpyCloud to negate the value of their employees' stolen data. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. The EU publicly blames Russia for GhostWriter and counsels Moscow to amend its ways. Finland's security services warn of foreign cyberespionage and influence threats. Zoombombing at the highest levels in Cambodia. Colossus is the latest ransomware kit on the block. Conti is back as predicted and has hit a major European call center. Dinah Davis from Arctic Wolf on cybersecurity learning standards. Our guest is Otavio Freire from Safeguard Cyber, with insights on how to defend against nation-state actors and zero-day exploits. And Huawei's CFO is back in China. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Monday, September 27th, 2021. The European Union on Friday publicly attributed the GhostWriter cyberespionage and disinformation operation to Russia. The statement said, quote, "Some EU member states have observed malicious cyber activities collectively designated as GhostWriter and associated these with the Russian state. Such activities are unacceptable as they seek to threaten our integrity and security, democratic values and principles, and the core functioning of our democracies. These malicious cyber activities are targeting numerous members of parliaments, government officials, politicians, and members of the press and civil society in the EU by accessing computer systems and personal accounts and stealing data. These activities are contrary to the norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace as endorsed by all UN member states and attempt to undermine our democratic institutions and processes, including by enabling disinformation and information manipulation. The European Union and its member states strongly denounce these malicious cyber activities, which all involved must put to an end immediately. We urge the Russian Federation to adhere to the norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace." End quote. No immediate action was announced, but as the statement's final sentence warned, the European Union will revert to this issue in upcoming meetings and consider taking further steps. The attribution and warning didn't say which nations had received the attention of GhostWriter, but as the Washington Post notes, the timing of the communiqué suggests concern for Germany, which held elections over the weekend. The outcome of that election seems to be that a center-left coalition led by Social Democrats with the smaller Green and Free Democrat parties will form the government that will succeed retiring Chancellor Angela Merkel's. Independently, Finland's Security and Intelligence Service called out both Russian and Chinese cyberespionage and influence operations as major continuing threats, Bloomberg reports. Cyberespionage and ransomware are seen as especially acute threats, but the assessment also assigns a particularly high risk to Finnish information infrastructure from potential legitimate investments by authoritarian states. According to online tech publication Rest of World, Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen Zoom-bombed an online conference held by the country's banned opposition party to tell participants that their communications were being monitored. The leader said, quote, "I have been listening and have entered to listen many times already," end quote, taking an unusually hands-on approach to warning the opposition. He is said to have wagged his finger and cautioned the opposition to behave themselves and stop insulting him should they expect to be permitted back into public life. Premier Hun Sen, a Khmer Rouge alumnus with all predispositions for social control and political repression that affiliation suggests, is believed to be working toward tighter control of Cambodia's internet. The Prime Minister said on his preferred Facebook platform that he'd previously attended 20 of the opposition's online meetings, explaining, quote, "This entry was just to give a warning message to the rebel group to be aware that Hun Sen's people are everywhere. Please be careful and don't do any activities against the national interest." End quote. Cambodia's control over its domestic internet is regarded as likely to increase this coming February when the country's national internet gateway comes online. The gateway will route all internet traffic through a single point, where a state operator will exert national policy by blocking undesirable websites and collecting user metadata. On Friday, ZeroFox discovered and described a new ransomware strain they're calling Colossus. Its one known victim is a U.S.-based automotive dealership group, and the attack is the now familiar double extortion that both encrypts data and then threatens the public release. Colossus hasn't shown much disposition to chatter on the dark web, but its operation suggests familiarity with the ransomware-as-a-service criminal market. In particular, their communications with their victims have a familiar look, resembling as they do similar messages issued by Epsilon Red, also known as Black Cocaine, and R-Evil, also, of course, known as Sodinokibi. This suggests, ZeroFox suspects, that Colossus may be using a similar builder. A dump page for doxing uncooperative victims has yet to appear, but ZeroFox expects one to surface shortly. The Record reports that the major European call center operator GSS has sustained an attack with Conti ransomware. The attack hit on September 18th. GSS has taken down affected systems and is working toward a full restoration of normal services. Russophone security researcher Haber, disappointed with his treatment by Apple's bug bounty program and Apple's failure to respond, has published, according to Forbes, 3 zero-day vulnerabilities affecting iOS 14 and iOS 15. Haber says he disclosed the bugs to Apple's bounty program back in March. And finally, the BBC reports that Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou is back in China after reaching a deferred prosecution agreement with the U.S. Department of Justice. Justice agreed to defer prosecution in exchange for Ms. Meng's admission of having misled its partner, financial services firm HSBC, about Huawei's extensive and sanctions-violating involvement with Iran. The New York Times reports that Canadian citizens whom China had detained shortly after Ms. Meng's arrest were also released and have returned to Canada. Recall that Ms. Meng had been detained in Vancouver pursuant to a U.S. warrant and had been fighting her extradition to the States. Their arrests were widely regarded as intended simply to give China leverage in the Meng case. The Guardian quotes critics as calling China's actions hostage diplomacy, which probably isn't a bad characterization. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. There's a reason more than half of today's ransomware victims end up paying the ransom. Cybercriminals have become thoughtful, taking time to maximize your organization's potential damage and their payoffs. After achieving root access, the bad guys explore your network, reading email, finding data troves, and once they know you, they craft a plan to cause the most panic, pain, and operational disruption. Ransomware has gone nuclear. The folks at KnowBe4 have an upcoming webinar that'll get you up to speed on ransomware. In this webinar, you'll find out why data backups, even offline backups, won't save you, why ransomware isn't your real problem, and how your end users can become your best last line of defense. Go to knowbe4.com/ransom to learn more about the webinar. That's knowbe4.com/ransom. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. 0 days are notoriously difficult to defend against, since these types of exploits are developed to target vulnerabilities that are unknown to software developers. One of the ways to mitigate these types of attacks is to continuously look for potential vulnerabilities within the software that's being used. Otavio Freire is president, CTO, and co-founder of Safeguard Cyber, and he offers these insights.
You've built a great piece of software or technology or infrastructure, and the bad guys, either it's organized hackers or up to nation states, have figured out a way, a hole in that infrastructure that you did not know about, and use it to exploit for espionage, for financial gain, for, take a pick of malicious means.
Is it fair to say that not all 0 days are created equal?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, take SolarWinds, right? I would almost put that in one extreme. Very sophisticated operation carried out, we now know, by a nation state that, took advantage of supply chain, figure out massive scale, created a 0 day, if you will. On the other extreme, you have some WebKit in a browser that you go to a website and it's exploiting some vulnerability in JavaScript or a browser that does something to a targeted group of users. So absolutely. I think there's a continuum both of complexity, investment, and outcome from 0 days. There's effectively a market for it. There was a working financial market that buys these 0 days. Governments buy these 0 days, and the prices vary, right? Depending on their sophistication and complexity and operating system. The price that they can be purchased at is a proxy almost for the level of sophistication or the spectrum of sophistication out there.
And how does an organization prepare against this? I mean, how do you dial in appropriate resources for this particular type of threat?
Yeah, well, it's important to point out the disparity between the sophistication attackers in any organization, right? No matter how sophisticated. So it always is no matter the situation, it's a David and Goliath. I think we all need to understand that. That being said, organizations, can always do better in terms of preparing for these attackers. I think the very first step is understand what your risk is, right? It is a hard thing to accomplish, actually, easy thing to say, but it's an important step because there are just basics that need to be done. A good backup process, a good threat intelligence process built around your organization, a QMS system that takes into account the best practices of a cybersecurity program. There are things that you can just do to make sure in case of a cyber attack that you well prepared. And, this all leads to some risk assessment that you can do to prepare for the case of a nation state attack. I mean, of course, after the attack, a breach has occurred. Well, it's just too late. So, the hard work is creating that resilience, understanding your risk level, and then addressing it. So how do you prevent malware and ransomware from propagating the business? How do you, in case you are attacked through ransomware, now you're thinking down the chessboard, well, how do I avoid a data loss attached to a ransomware? And then how do I also protect the human attack vector from these nation state attack? And if you watch the DBIR reports over the years, it just social engineering and the human factor just kept rising as more of the means that you deliver things such as ransomware. So looking at your organization, understanding that the human is a potential attack vector. Humans are using communication channels, everything from email to something like we're on today here, or a video-based collaboration tool These are all means that these incredibly destructive tools of these nation states, such as ransomware, can be delivered. So, it's important to have a automated software that allows you to detect when these attacks are taking place and respond. But even more importantly, you got to think up the value chain and start with the risk, right? To avoid you get to that point. But it is a complicated matter to defend against nation states for sure.
That's Otavio Freire from Safeguard Cyber. And now, a word from our sponsor, Ningio. Are you still measuring the success of your cybersecurity awareness training program by the number of people who take simulated fish bait? That was yesterday's thinking. Reactive metrics don't provide an accurate indication of a true cybersecurity-aware culture. Instead, it's about proactive metrics that offer deep insight into how your employees are thinking about cybersecurity, what encourages them to report suspicious activity, and how often they are thwarting attacks. That's where Ningio comes in. Through animated micro-learning episodes featuring celebrity actors, Ningio empowers individuals and organizations to obtain the proactive skills, habits, and behaviors to truly become defenders against cyber threats. Let Ningio show you how to create proactive cybersecurity-aware cultures from the inside out. New Ningio episodes release every month. So head over to ningio.com, that's Ninjio.com, to learn more and watch their latest episode for free. And we thank Ningio for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Dinah Davis. She is the VP of R&D Operations at Arctic Wolf. Dinah, it's always great to have you back. I wanted to touch today on something that I know you've been following, and this is learning standards when it comes to cybersecurity. What do you have to share with us today?
Yeah, I was really excited that recently cyber.org came out with an entire curriculum for teaching cybersecurity to kids from K all the way to 12. Really impressed with it. It splits up how they teach it into three main categories, which is like computing systems, where they talk about like networking and, software updates and that kind of stuff, digital citizenship. And for that one, it's all about like cyberbullying, digital footprint, like getting, making sure they know and are aware of what it is to be online. And then information security is the last column. I was very excited about this. I've maybe posted a couple times to the Canadian government that they should get on this. I've also been a big believer in kids learning tech and computing really early. I feel like we teach our kids about physics, about biology and math, so that they know when the doctors are talking or they go see a specialist or something, it's not magic. It's science. It's based in reality. And with their worlds being so digital, I really think they should know it's not magic.
That's interesting. So it's in a way, demystifying some of the things that are going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. They should understand that it's just algorithms that are working on their iPad, that it's not, it can't do everything, because a human had to program it to do that.
It strikes me, along with what you're saying there, that, we teach kids things like basic health and hygiene. And I wonder, with computers and certainly their online networks and these being a primary way in which they interact with their friends, does this go along with that? Is this a basic skill that needs to be just part of growing up that all kids really should have?
I think so. And it's not just the technology, it is the security part. And I was really excited to see that they put the digital citizenship with it as well, because that's also your privacy, and what you do online matters, and it will be recorded. And also just that you can have all of your stuff stolen. right? So, we don't go out in the world and tell our kids to just walk across the street without looking both ways, right? Because they could get hit by a bus. Well, the internet's not that different, right? There's some pretty crappy things that can happen to them online if we don't teach them what's safe.
Do you think there's a component to this as well of bringing the parents up to speed and having them understand what part they play?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I don't know what the cyber org has in their settings, but I know that as part of their curriculum, it's teaching teachers how to teach this. So at the very least, it's pulling teachers in to get engaged and educated about it. Because if they're not educated about it, they're going to do things in front of the students that potentially are risky behaviors, not bad, but they could be using the same password and giving that password out to everyone. And then that's an okay thing to do, but it's not, right?
Right. Wash your hands, right? Brush your teeth.
Exactly.
Don't reuse your passwords.
Yes.
Yeah.
In my household, those are some hardcore things.
Yeah, boy, I'll bet all the kids love to visit the Davis family, right? Now, kids, before we eat dinner, I'm going to need you to show me your YubiKeys.
I think my teenager daughter would kill me if I did that.
Yeah, I'll bet she would. All right. Well, Dinah Davis, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible. And speaking of sponsors, stay tuned for a message from our sponsor, Arctic Wolf. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Don't forget to check out the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast, where I contribute to a regular segment called Security, Huh? I join Jason and Brian on their show for a lively discussion of the latest security news every week. You can find Grumpy Old Geeks where all the fine podcasts are listed, and check out the Recorded Future podcast, which I also host. The subject there is threat intelligence, and every week we talk to interesting people about timely cybersecurity topics. That's at recordedfuture.com/podcast. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brandon Karp, Peru Prakash, Justin Sabi, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And now, a message from our sponsor, Arctic Wolf. When it comes to mitigating the impact of a security incident, minutes matter. So the question is, how long would it take your organization to detect a ransomware attack? The answer could be the difference between business as usual and devastating consequences to your customers' bottom line and reputation. Learn how the Arctic Wolf platform and concierge security team can help your organization detect the undetectable, not in days or hours, but minutes. For the first time, take an exclusive look at how their experts investigated, escalated, and remediated a real-life ransomware attack on a local government organization. Visit arcticwolf.com/cyberwire to check out on-demand webinars, an interactive timeline, and find resources to help you learn how to continually improve your security posture over time. With Arctic Wolf, stop breaches before they disrupt business. Explore real-world examples at arcticwolf.com/cyberwire. And we thank Arctic Wolf for sponsoring our show.